Hello, friends. Thank you for joining us here at Forbes Library. We're here in the Calvin Coolidge Presidential Library and Museum at Forbes. Very grateful to see some folks here in person, and we're also live streaming, so hello, YouTube. This recording will be available to watch later this week. Some housekeeping. If you need a restroom or water fountain, those are across the gallery into the Arts and Music Department and to the left, and the exits through the gallery and to the right, the same way you came up. My name is Priya. I organize our adult programming here at Forbes Library, so if you have ideas or dreams or wishes or local authors who you would like to come see read here, please do let me know. We'll try to make it happen. And our adult programming and programming in general here at Forbes is supported by the Friends of Forbes Library, so if you want to support the good work that we do, support the good work that they do. And I can share more info about that if you'd like. But down to tonight's program. We have Heather Abel and Kimaya Diggs here tonight. I'm going to read their bios real quick, and then we'll get started. Starting with our first reader, Kimaya Diggs is a writer and musician based in Western Mass. She holds a degree in creative writing from Swarthmore College, where she studied short fiction. She was a 2017 Callaloo Fellow in Poetry and a 2022 Pushcart nominee. In 2020, she co-headlined the Emily Dickinson Museum's Tell It Slant Poetry Festival alongside Jericho Brown and former U.S. poet laureate Ada Limón, playing music live from Emily's bedroom. That is really cool. By night, she can be found playing with her band on various stages across New England and beyond. And then we'll have Heather Abels, whose debut novel, The Optimistic Decase, takes place in the Colorado high desert. Her second novel, The Emilys, will be published in June of this year and is set in a somewhat altered Northampton, Mass. Her essays have appeared in the New York Times, Slate, the LA Times, and the online Paris Review, among other places. She teaches creative writing at Smith College. So with that, I will get out of the way. Welcome, let's get started. Thanks.
Thanks, Priya. I'm kind of nervous to read because the last time I read anything I wrote was probably 2015, I believe. So that is stressful to me. Thank you for being here. I'm going to read from an essay collection that I wrote between 2020 and 2024. As most of you here know, my mom died about 5 years ago after having breast cancer for 12 years. And for most of that time, she was diagnosed when I was 16. For most of that time, we weren't allowed to talk about it with people outside of the family. And so I spent a good 12 years writing stories about grief and about loss. And then when she finally did pass, I ended up writing these essays about her. So for some context, the whole collection is about that experience, our time getting a rescue dog during the pandemic, and my time as a death worker playing music in hospice. And it also includes some collaged material like texts and journal entries and stuff like that, and it jumps between time periods. So the piece I'll read today takes place after my mom's death, when my mom's side of the family goes to Provincetown on Cape Cod for a family vacation. My grandfather, Bapu, is hard of hearing, so my Aunt Hannah has to repeat everything said in his presence at a louder volume. My grandmother, Bomphy, is standing like a miniature Hulk in the door of her hotel suite, and she's screaming at Bapu while Hannah translates, her voice heavy and deadpan. She says the cruelty ends today, Hannah shouts, as if she's giving directions to someone in a car idling 20 feet away. Okay, Bapu says, nodding. He's not fazed. My grandmother yells something else. She says she's through with you, Hannah adds. Bapu opens his hands, like, what can you say to that? He shrugs. Okay, goodbye, we're through. He always plays along with Bomphy, even when she gets like this. She melts down remarkably easy for a woman who raised 14 kids. In a different time, she would have been on Lexapro. The smallest things send her into a spiral, doubly so if she's on vacation. Since her dementia worsened, she's less predictable than ever, so my aunts and uncles are scheduled around the clock with shifts to take care of her. My mother's off the list on account of her being dead for 12 weeks. My father's on the list in her stead. His shift is off to a bad start. Kimi, help me, my grandmother pleads, gripping my arm in her hands. All my things are gone, and these monsters are being unspeakable. She gestures at Bapu, Aunt Hannah, and my dad, who didn't know what he was getting into when he volunteered to take a Bomphy shift in my mother's place. He shrugs at me from the hotel sofa. "This is a hotel, Mom," Bapu shouts. "Your things are at home." She's discovered that the closet and drawers here are empty. The only logical explanation is that she's been robbed and everyone around her is in on it. Bomphy mumbles something under her breath. "You'll never see her again, Dad," Hannah translates reluctantly. "She's through with all of that. And what was that? Oh, we'll regret everything we've done to her." Bapu and my father look at each other and shrug. "Goodbye then," Bapu shouts. It's strange being here in P-Town this year. It's the 28th year and the first year without my mom, and everyone knows it. We're not the only family that has a timeshare here. It's always the same week of the summer. Most of the hotel operates like a normal hotel, but the timeshare rooms have hosted the same families for decades. I know the other families by heart. The couple on the third floor with the daughter my age and the son a little older, my first beach crush as a kid. The tall brown man with the gray crew cut and the big taut belly. For 28 years, he's polished his motorcycle every morning and played shuffleboard every night. The middle-aged ladies in neon bathing suits and visors. The old couple in the room next to my grandparents' room. His wife's hair is a golden cloud. The husband's chest hair is pure white. He wears gold chains and a cornuto charm. They lay side by side on the boardwalk and tan their skin, which is deep brown and feathered with tiny lines. They must have been young when we started coming here, but to me, they've always been old. We've known each other forever. "I'm so sorry to hear about your mother," the wife says on our first day back. I'm walking past their recliners in a bikini. There's something unsettling about receiving condolences in a bikini. There's an indignity to it that alarms me. "Your mother was a wonderful woman, always doing crafts with you kids. What a shame." She has a thick Boston accent and says mother like mother. She looks at her husband over the rose-pink lenses of her sunglasses. He nods at me. "Marvelous woman," he says. More words than I've ever heard him say. I still feel like I should be wearing more clothes for this conversation, but there's nothing to do about it. We don't even know each other's names, but they've seen me run buck naked down this boardwalk as a toddler, watched me walk past them with my nose in a book. Maybe they laughed as I tripped on the hem of a peasant skirt during my middle school bohemian phase. They've taken family photos for us, seen my mother grab me by the arm when I talked back, grabbed me by the arm last summer when she didn't want our hotel room sprayed with chemical disinfectant. 7 days a year, 25 years in a row. They don't know me like my friends do, but in many ways, they know me better. They know enough to be sure that I'm not the same person I was last summer. They've lived long enough to see people die before their time. They know how wrong it is. They offer their condolences with the sincerity of lifelong friends and the detachment of strangers. My grandmother isn't the same person she was last summer either. Last year, she could walk to the ocean in 5 minutes, and she could float at high tide in a life jacket. She loves the ocean. Last year, her face was open and often full of joy. "It's Kimi," I could tell her, "Anju's oldest girl." She would nod her head and say, "Of course." This summer, something's changed. "I'm Anju's girl," I tried saying. She looked at me fearfully. "Who's Anju?" "Your oldest daughter." "Oh, she's gone, isn't she?" "Yes." "My mother's gone too?" "She is." "I'm afraid someone killed them," she said. "I'm afraid they're going to kill us next." Is all this stuff in my brain? She gestured at her head, her hands moving in jagged motions. Is all this Anju's fault? When my mother died, Bomphy could still comprehend enough to know what had happened. "You're not supposed to see both ends," she said to me on the phone. "Both ends of what?" I asked. "Both ends," she insisted. "Of someone's life?" I suggested. "Yes, you're only supposed to see one or the other. It isn't right to see both." When my mother's memorial took place 8 weeks later, Bomphy couldn't reliably remember that her daughter was gone. Something in her brain had changed. Her dementia deepened as soon as her child died, almost as if my mom had taken a piece of her away. I don't blame her. If I had died before my mother, she would have gone utterly mad. I resist telling Bomphy the truth. Is all this stuff in your head her fault? Yes, maybe it is. 10 minutes later, Bomphy and I have made it down the 4 stairs from the boardwalk to the beach, and we're headed towards the ocean. We're only 30 feet from the door of her hotel room. I hear my dad consoling Bapu, or maybe it's the other way around. My father misses his wife, whose body is somewhere underground. My grandfather who misses his wife, whose body is here next to me, but whose mind is a braid unraveled. We make it 15 steps into the sand when she needs to sit down. Here, the path is narrow and the beach grass presses in on both sides. When my cousins and I were kids, the adults in the family would scream if we went too close to the tall grasses. "You're going to get ticks!" Then, before bed, we'd get tick-checked. My mother scratched the freckle on my foot with her nail. In spite of the risk of ticks, I lowered my grandmother to the ground. I knew she couldn't take another step. Her pale legs, soft and draped with fine folds of skin, collapsed neatly beneath her. Her small, thin arms grew taut with wiry muscle and unfolded with the intensity of hydraulics. "Bomphy, your arms are so strong." Usually she'd widen her eyes and smile. "Oh, really?" I'd laugh and tell her she's always been a gym rat. Now that she could no longer remember going to People Fit, she was often surprised by this news. "That's amazing," she'd say, laughing. "Me at the gym." It doesn't make her laugh today. She looks at the ocean and sighs. "Which way was I going?" she asks wearily. I point towards the water. "Oh, I see. It's far." I sit in front of her, knees sinking into the sand. Her mood is like a swallow at dusk these days. I can hear a speedboat on the waves, kids playing volleyball down the beach, a distant biplane. The sand here is coarse. It presses cubic dents into the skin of my ankles. She begins to rant about how poorly the world has treated her. I try in vain to redirect her stream of thoughts to augment her mood. We sit there for an hour. Strangers step over us as they walk to or from the ocean. Each one asks, "Are you okay?" looking only at me. A man from the condo next to the hotel brings us a glass of water. "She's not faint," I tell him. "She's just..." Bomphy looks up at me with the face of a child. I turn away from her. "Dementia," I whisper as softly as I can. The man looks down at Bomphy, then at me. "Ugh, it's a beast. My dad too," he says, speaking louder than my discreet whisper, then walks back to his condo, leaving the glass behind. "His dad too what?" Bomphy asks as I settle into the sand beside her. "His dad too what?" I've been here before, staring at the ocean while a woman I love comes undone beside me. I wonder if I'll be the one coming loose at the seams next year or many years in the future. What girl will sit with me while I fall apart? Who will she be? Another 30 minutes passes. This time we're mostly silent. Every now and then I point out a bee or a butterfly or a nearby bird. "Beautiful," I say. She raises her eyebrows skeptically like she's humoring me. When I'm not pointing out wildlife, I see her staring at me, trying to understand something in my face. I look at the horizon and let her take her time. There must be something in me that she knows she knows. More time slips by. More slips away from her every day. She knew who my mother was as she lay dying in the hospital bed, but outside of the hospital, she thought that the building itself was a dorm at Mount Holyoke College, her deeply beloved alma mater. "What wrong college did you go to again?" she cackled at me. "This one at least had good sense," she said, pointing at my sister Savita with her foot. We spent hours outside of the hospital that day, taking turns going up to see my mother, one at a time, due to COVID restrictions. In between visits to our mom's deathbed, Savita was on her laptop, taking the last exams of her senior year at MHC. "Mount Holyoke forever shall be," she said to our grandmother. Bomphy cocked her head. "What is that?" "It's from a song you love," I said. Savita dutifully paused her exam to sing the alma mater song to Bomphy, whose lips moved in tiny ghost-like motions along with the lyrics. Makeda and I joined in on the chorus. "Mount Holyoke forever shall be, Mount Holyoke forever shall be." Bomphy clapped her hands with glee. "What a lovely song." She peered at all of us closely. "Did you go to Mount Holyoke College?" I see her now, out of the corner of my eye, sizing me up. The whites of her own eyes are big and fearful, like a cow's. Finally, she speaks. "I'm afraid I don't have any money." I look at her and she's trembling. Her vocal tremor makes her speech almost indecipherable. "They've taken it all. I don't know how to get it. It's inside of computers. And without it, I can't do a damn thing." She takes a deep breath. "I need you to help me." "You don't have to worry about money, sweetie," I say. She shakes her head. "You don't understand, do you? I need to take it away before I'm gone." "Where are you going?" I ask. "I'm going to die." We've spoken about her death before. She's been sending me emails about her imminent death since I was 14 years old. But she continues, surprising me. Tonight, I'm going to drown myself in the ocean. They've been so cruel to me, but when I'm gone, they'll be sorry. Let's go. She pauses. Which way was I going? I hesitate, then point towards the hotel. Instantly, her eyes flash with rage. You're lying. Don't lie. You don't want me to die, and God knows why not, but you're lying to me. I know the ocean is that way. She can't see it from where we are, flat on the sand and surrounded by grass over our heads, but she can feel it. So can I. I'm sorry, I say. I got confused. She knows I'm lying, but she's willing to go along with it. She knows I tried to trick her. You were going to the ocean. To kill myself, my wretched, wretched self. My mother also spoke to herself like this when she felt low. Not suicide threats, but self-hatred that was unmatched and seemed to come out of nowhere. Stupid Anju, she would mutter to herself. It embarrassed me to hear. But now that she's gone, I talk to myself that way too. I'm not allowed to make mistakes anymore. Why do you want to kill yourself, I ask. My grandmother's eyes are fascinating. They're medium brown, big, watery, crystal clear, and topped with my mother's eyebrows, wide and flat and sparse. Her eyes have looked at me with so much love and so much rage. Her eyes are like warning flags as the tide rolls in. Right now, the look she's giving me is dripping with scorn as she raises her hand to my face. After college, I worked in hospice with dementia patients, and they hit me all the time. Usually, it came like a praying mantis strike, like a flash. But Bonfi's hand is moving slowly, so I don't reach up to stop her. Her hand is balled into a shaking fist. I wait to see what will happen. I hold my breath. As her fist nears my face, her index finger pops out and she pokes me in the forehead like she's pushing an elevator button. The press is firm and deliberate. The essential tremor that quivers her hands and voice and head is still for a moment as she pushes against me. In her eyes, scorn gives way to pity. Girl, she says, and her voice is dark and heavy and thick. I feel hypnotized. Think. I suddenly see myself through a telescope. Look, I'm so tiny, and all around me are countless reasons to die. The people who have hurt me, the way I hurt myself. I have no mother. My sisters don't understand me. No one in my extended family cares about me. Some of my friends are racist. The world hurts. The climate, wars. Should I have children? People kill each other. Pain, illness, death. My choice, my time, the only way to be in control. I zoom back in on myself and my grandmother. I see her. I understand. I understand, I say, and she releases me, lowering her hand. I know, she says. We sit in silence. We've been here for 2 hours, and the sun is beginning to set. Can you do it tomorrow? I ask. The sun is going down, and it's going to get buggy soon, and we're still so far away from the ocean. How far? I pop up on my knees so I can see over the beach grass. Like 200 feet, probably. That's far. Too far for today, right? She looks at me steadily to see if I'm tricking her. I'm telling the truth. I'll help you if you still want to die tomorrow, I promise. Besides, if you're going to kill yourself in the ocean, you might as well have your bathing suit on. She narrows her eyes, then her face opens in a grin. She laughs. Clever. I pull her to her feet. Here is what I wish happened. We walked back to the hotel room, and all was well. She ate dinner, watched a little TV, and went to bed. Here's what actually happened. She forgot our deal as soon as she stood up, and she got angry again. I had to recruit my sister Makeda and my Aunt Hannah to get her up the stairs to the boardwalk because she didn't want to take another step. She was cutting and cruel to both of them and reduced my sister to tears. By then, my father's shift with Bonfi was over, so once she was in the hotel room, I happily abandoned her with my aunt. After dinner, I ran down the beach and touched the water. The ocean is always cold in P-Town. I imagined holding Bonfi's pain around me like a blanket, and then I let it go into the sea. I release you, I whispered into the darkness. I don't know if it worked. Probably not, because I'm pretty sure that metaphysical, spiritual stuff is made up to help us feel better about the things we can't control. The next day, she didn't want to die. Kimi, she greeted me with a two-handed wave. I sat with her on the boardwalk and sang songs that she'd taught me 25 years ago. She moved her lips as I sang, her breath coming out almost silently. "Where did you learn that?" she asked. I grabbed her hand. "From you," I said. She gasped in delight. "Incredible. Sing it again."
That was so good. Oh my God, I love that so much. Wow, yay. So I'm going to read an essay as well. I'm primarily a writer of fiction, but I want to read an essay. But I want to first tell you about some fiction. I have a novel coming out in 5 months and 2 days. I'm not counting the days or anything. And I want to tell you a little about it. Because the opening scene, it takes place in Pulaski Park, right here, like right there. And in it, a woman, mother of small kids, is there, and she runs into a friend she hasn't seen in 35 years, who had been her best friend when they were 12. And that sets off what happens in this book. And the friend's daughter has something going on with her that no one can figure out. She can't go outside. When she goes outside, she gets really sick. And it starts happening to other people in this town, which is this town of Northampton, Massachusetts. And the book is about these women and other people in the town coming together to try and figure out what is going on. And it's that mystery, but it's also the mystery of how do you connect with a friend you haven't seen in 35 years? How do you take care of a friend whose daughter is sick? How do you take care of your neighbor? And one of the characters who helps figure all this out, one of the main characters in the book, is named Ruth, and she is a librarian at Forbes Library. So it's such an honor to get to be here in Forbes Library and read and think about her. And I wanted to show you the book, which is called The Emilys, which does refer to the same Emily that Kimaya just talked about, our local reclusive poet. Emily Dickinson's not in the book, but you'll learn why it's called The Emilys. And there is no one named Emily in the book, also to know. So that doesn't come out for a while, so I thought I would read an essay about waiting for things. And this is an essay that it's about waiting, and it's about waiting in a very, very different time when we used to wait. So some of you will remember it, and some of you might not remember it as well because it takes place in 95. Okay. The place I've lived that I remember most wistfully, with the most painful pull of nostalgia, is a place where I was always waiting. For the 3 years I lived there, I waited. Not only for the large questions to be answered, who I would become and who I would love, because I was young then and knew little, but also for my smallest desires to be satisfied. I waited all week for my Sunday long-distance call to my mother. I waited 3 months for Thai spring rolls. First, identifying a person who might be willing to drive me the 2 hours to the nearest Thai restaurant. I didn't have a car. Then befriending him, and finally suggesting the trip. Mostly, though, I waited for music. Since the nearest record store was hundreds of miles away, I waited 6 months to be chosen by the public radio station as a volunteer DJ. Each Wednesday, I'd bike down the mesa, the Milky Way pulsing above me, and from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., I'd listen to and submit the early waking ranchers to my favorite songs, so songs by Liz Phair and Pavement and Dusty Springfield. When my shift ended and I headed to my paying job, I could feel the songs leave me, feel myself waiting for them again. You might be wondering where this place was. What purgatorial abyss? It was a small town in the Mountain West where I'd moved in order to write for a newspaper, and it was 1995, which meant the internet was a museum where the exhibits rarely changed. At the time, I had a crush on a man who I met when he was visiting a local farmer. He'd returned to Jerusalem where he lived, but one night I found him again while searching through the farmer's personal website, and this was the first personal website I'd ever seen. The two of them were tan, with wry smiles in white beach chairs, and I looked at this picture most evenings, once everyone left the office and I could access a computer with the internet. Alone, I felt a voyeuristic thrill from sneaking up on their photo, but it was a neutered prowl, the way a house cat stalks and pounces upon a stuffed animal. While the photo promised connectivity to the faraway world, it gave me no actual connection. After I stared for a while, I would find myself neither sated nor distracted, but lit up in my loneliness. The office would have grown dark by the time I shut down the computer and walked out the door. I'd bike home, thinking about the fact that nobody knew where I was. It would be days before my mother called again. I didn't have the money to call my friends back in San Francisco. What were they doing? Who were they seeing? I didn't know. In the cabin I rented 3 miles away from the office, I ate chickpeas from a can. My husband's laughing because that was what I ate before I met him and he started cooking for me, which made my life much better. Back then, so there were no lights outside, no other houses, just the mesa and a mountain. Inside my house, or my cabin really, spaghetti sauce stains dripped down the wood paneling. From my boombox, Dylan sang Blood on the Tracks over and over, his the only voice I heard. When I think about that time, I wonder how I bore such silence. No signals came to me from the world, no news, no chatter. These days, I can't sit 5 minutes on a bus, 1 minute on a bus, without checking my phone. How did my brain work? That person is a stranger to me now. I'm not trying to romanticize a slower pace. I'm not advocating a regressive purge of the computers and phones that keep us so connected and our small desires so quickly met. But I'd like to remember what it felt like when we tried to touch the outlines of our waiting and there were no outlines, when our waiting stretched as far as the night sky. In that mountain town, all of my romantic relationships were with objects. In addition to the photo of the man on the beach, I was in a relationship with a CD at the radio station by a singer I'd never heard of before. His witty and angry lyrics, which revealed him to be the horny son of a Holocaust survivor, seemed the perfect antithesis to the pastoral cheerfulness of Colorado, the constant Rocky Mountain high. This was just before Christmas, and I spent that back in California learning how my friends had moved on without me. Nobody had heard of the folk singer. When I returned to Colorado, snow covered the mesas like white ocean under blue skies, and it stayed there until April. One early Wednesday morning, I was absent-mindedly reading a list of announcements on air, and I found myself saying the folk singer's name. He was coming to perform in our town. Nobody performed in our town. It was as if I conjured him with my longing. 2 weeks later, I arrived early at the yoga studio where he was to perform. I claimed a folding chair in the front row. Everyone I knew filed in, the newspaper staff where I worked, and the Forest Service employees, and the hippies who built houses out of straw or tires. But not the ranchers, though, or the coal miners. The folk singer told stories in a drawl that I decided was an affectation of an affectation. He was doing Bobby Zimmerman becoming Bob Dylan. And in my crushed-out solipsism, I believe that only I noticed the layers of irony. At the end of his set, he said that he needed a ride to the nearest Greyhound station, which was an hour and a half to the north in Glenwood Springs. Then the lights came on and everyone filed out. Waiting is wanting plus time. It's that ache beneath the rib cage. If I lived in that town now and the folk singer came and things were different, there'd be so many ways to ease that ache. I might ask to take a selfie with him and post it, waiting for the Instagram hearts to warm me up. I might DM him the next day, great show. I'd hope he would follow me back and I wouldn't ask for more. But back then, without such options, I lied. I approached the folk singer who was unplugging his amp and I told him I was heading to the Roaring Fork River in the morning to kayak. And it would be no problem to drop him off at the Greyhound station on my way. Wow, he said, you kayak? No, I didn't, not really. I had one really close friend in the town. She was a gregarious, brilliant woman named Lisa who kayaked with the ease she did everything. I'd been spending my Saturdays driving an hour to a public swimming pool where kayakers were allowed to practice on the waveless water. I'd sit in her boat, attached to it by a neoprene skirt. She'd push me into the water and then, screaming from the side of the pool, try to coach me to roll over and return upright as river kayakers have to do when a rapid pushes them under. It was a forced drowning, and I hated it. Each time I used the emergency strap and released myself from the boat, swimming madly to the surface. Sure, I kayak, I told the folk singer, so we'll need to leave really early. I don't think I slept that night. I was outside Lisa's house before 5 a.m., tying her kayak to the roof of her car for verisimilitude. When I drove to the mesa where the folk singer was staying, I found him waiting in the blue dawn with his guitar, a winsome pose all folk singers are contractually obligated to make, as Kimaya knows. As we drove away, he rolled down his window and shouted into the emptiness, "Let it be known that I love it here. I love it." I loved it there too. I loved it since the day I'd arrived, but I hadn't fully realized it until that moment when someone was there to witness my love and to share it. One thing about living in a state of prolonged waiting is that you know when it's over. The drive to Glenwood Springs offered a series of delights. We drove up a mountain pass cluttered with aspens dressed in their new greens. We descended into a valley presided over by giant peaks. So we skimmed alongside the Crystal River. Impulsively, I pulled over and led the folk singer through the brush to where along the river sulfuric water burbled up. We'd been talking the whole drive, finding commonalities like beachcombers searching for shells, and it seemed now like anything could happen. We could rip off our clothes, plunge into the river, but it was riotous with snowmelt, overflowing the rocks where I usually found hot water. Still, the possibility of adventure glimmered around us. I mentioned Glenwood Springs' eponymous hot springs, which was a vast pool of mineral water. The folk singer said he'd happily take a later bus, but what about my friends waiting by the river for me? I stopped at a payphone and pretended to call my made-up friends. The trip, I reported back, was fortuitously postponed. I have no idea whether he believed me, but a short while later, we were renting bathing suits and lockers amid the fug of chlorine and baby powder, the cement wet under our bare feet. What is a happy ending but a true cessation, however brief, of waiting? Like starvation before a meal, all the waiting I'd done heightened the joy I felt that day. We didn't even make out. But we carried each other on the water through clusters of old ladies and babies in their water wings. He held me, and then I held him. I remember the way my pubes, climbing around my rented bathing suit, reached for the water's surface like sea plants. I remember the bumps on his back. We were kind to each other, unembarrassed in each other's arms. It was a kindness dependent on our understanding of transience. We had no camera, no chance of being seen by my friends or his fans. Everything about that day would slip away. Late that afternoon, I finally drove him to the Greyhound, and we exchanged addresses. He disappeared as he'd appeared, a nod from the universe telling me, "You do exist." Driving home, I knew what lay ahead. I had only a few glorious hours before I parked at Lisa's house and untied her kayak and began waiting for a letter to appear in my P.O. box. I would check the mail 2 or 3 times a day, although it was only delivered once. But I knew how to wait. Thanks. Now we're going to talk. Thank you. So we're going to ask each other some questions, and then we'd love to hear any questions. Oh, I'm supposed to do this in here. And we'd love to hear any questions you have, too.
I think it's on. It sounds like. Check, check, check. Good. Awesome. That was really beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So was yours.
Thank you. It made me wonder, when did you finish this book manuscript? How long have you been waiting for this to come out?
That's a great question. So it was a year last June that I finished the edits. So it was, books are so slow. I'm really curious if albums are slow,
Yes.
because books are so slow. I mean, I sold it to my editor summer of 24, and it will come out in summer of 26.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that made me, there's one question that I've really been thinking about a lot when I knew we were doing this, and it's that, so I'm also a musician, and for music, it's fairly common to release your music independently by yourself. You're not on anyone's timeline or deadline. I think it's becoming more common for books, but traditionally you're going through traditional publishing channels. And I'm kind of curious to know about your take on the muse or inspiration when you're someone who has to work on a deadline.
That's such a great question. I love a deadline. A deadline really helps me. I mean, so much of writing a novel, even with any publishing, you're on your own, right? You're just there looking at your computer thinking, is this ever going to become anything? And so when I get to a point where someone is saying, well, I'd like to see that soon, either it's my agent or my editor, I mean, it just puts a spring in my step. Like things just click along a little quicker. So I think that, but the drafting part of the book, for this book and my previous book, I was just in my own world. So maybe that's when the muse comes. But in terms of things sort of accelerating and clicking, I love knowing someone's going to want to read it.
That's good to hear. I also feel like, I know you teach, and I went to school for creative writing, and the thing that I learned that was the most helpful for me, which right now I'm applying more to music than writing, but this idea that developing the craft elements of your writing will prevent you from just waiting for inspiration all the time, because I do remember being in college and being like, I don't have any ideas, so I'm not going to write.
Yeah.
And there's something to like developing this like very strong craft that just makes it possible.
Well, I really want to hear how that is with music and with your own writing. For me, and this is what I say to my students, which is you just have to make yourself do something. And so with my students, I actually give these 2-page exercises. And my friends and I got this from grad school. My teacher would give us 2-page exercises, and now I give them to my students. And I have friends from grad school, if we're ever stuck, we'll just text, I need a 2-pager. And we'll get an assignment. And so the assignment could be, 2-pagers that include a presidential library, a beach, family reunion on the beach, and you just pick 3 words and you have to do something, and something comes from it. Or I could do, and so I often do a 2-pager based on an anecdote, sort of where an anecdote can take you. So I give those assignments to myself too. One thing I tell my students always is what's cringe to you? So half my class writing dialogue is cringe to them. And now your dialogue was excellent. I mean, it was so good. I kept thinking, wow, that is some good, you really nailed it. But half my students hate dialogue, and half of them hate description. And so I'll always say 2 pages on what you find to be most cringe. Ooh. And I kind of give myself those as well when I'm sitting down. If I can't wait for a story to come to me. I have to kind of like bulldoze my way in. Yeah.
I love that. I had a poetry teacher in college who was like, I think it's embarrassing to write about a cell phone or an angel in a poem. And I think about that a lot. I'm like, yeah, that is a little cringe.
Yeah, but you kind of got to just go with what is.
Yeah.
So what about you when you are writing your music? And I'm curious about what the difference is for you with writing this essay, for example, or any of your essays, and then sitting down to write a song. Like physically, is it different for you? Like mentally, what's the difference?
I would say that I think my craft is stronger in prose writing than songwriting. I feel a little bit more intuitive in songwriting, and I'm untrained in songwriting. And I would say when I am writing an essay, I don't often get stuck. Partially because I'm writing from my life, but I like to I don't typically find a moment where I'm like, I'm not sure which direction to go. I can produce a lot of volume, and that has always been the way I like to write, is just quantity over quality. And if there's a large enough quantity, there will be some quality in there.
Yes.
And with songwriting, I feel incredibly precious. So with this new album that I'm working on, I started with this kind of concept of never get stuck. So if I got stuck for a moment, I would switch to working on a different song. I used to feel really strongly about writing a song from start to finish, and I'd work for weeks on a single song. And then for this album, second I got stuck, I'm moving to another song. I'm doing them all on my computer instead of in my precious, quaint notebook. I am switching from guitar to piano or piano to guitar. Just any moment where I got stuck, it was not allowed. And that helped me, I think, infuse a little of the way I think about prose writing into my songwriting. And as a result, I think the album is super narrative. I think overall I've been saying this to people, I think I'm a theater artist disguised as a writer and a musician.
Okay, wait, will you unpack that? Like, what does that mean to you?
I think I want people to have a theater experience. I want them to arrive. I want them to go, what's going on? I want them to get a beginning, a middle, and end of the experience, whether it's reading something I've written or coming to one of my shows. And the reason why I say a theater artist as opposed to like a movie maker is because the thing I love about theater is that no matter what's happening, it's just people. There's not, you can't CGI things on stage. It's a guy in a black outfit rolling out a piece of wood that's painted like a house.
Exactly, yeah.
And I like this idea that like the creation or the scaffolding behind the story is visible all the time.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you another question about your writing process, because this is something I have been struggling with actually, which is when you're in the process of writing, do you find that you consume more media, books, stories, or less?
Well, let me think. I am always reading fiction. And so I know writers of fiction who will only read nonfiction when they're writing a novel. And I would feel empty inside if I wasn't reading fiction. So I am always reading fiction. And sometimes I think it gets in the way because you'll read something that's so amazing and you just think, oh, but actually I have to put, this in my book. And a book wouldn't work if it doesn't have, the star-crossed lovers or whatever it is that you're reading. So I don't think it always helps, but I am always reading it. What I love, my favorite thing in life, is that moment when the piece is coming together. And so for my novels, that took years, right? But where it's coming together and where everything in the world is referring back to it to you. And so anywhere I go, or a snippet of overheard conversation or a song feels like it's telling me something else about my characters or my story, and I feel like open to the world in that way. And I think that's the only reason I write, is to get into that state, because I love it, and so much of the time I'm not in it. And yeah, but what about you? I'm always wondering about, yes, because you have these two different things you write. And so when you're doing one, what's your relationship to the other?
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to hear what you said about having all these elements of this world all come together and being able to find everything you experience as something that refers to this world that you're creating in your writing. I have had a similar experience where I'm listening to music and I'm reading books while I'm making music and writing, and I often find myself getting confused about, do I like this or do I want to be the person who makes it? So I'll write my work, and I'll, every now and then there's a funny line, but it's not really humor writing. And then I'll read a David Sedaris essay that makes me laugh so much and cry so much, and I'll be like, I need more jokes.
Yeah, exactly.
But it doesn't work for me because that's just not the kind of writer that I am. And I get confused, is this a map for me, how I want to be, or is it just something that I can take in and let it change me the ways that it will change me, and then make the things that I'll make based on that? I would say I do struggle a little bit with there's a phase of my creative process where if I continue to listen to more music or continue to read more writing, I'm going to just get totally lost in the sauce. Yeah. So I would say I haven't listened to a ton of new music recently, and then when I was working on these essays, towards the end, I was like, okay, that's enough. I can't be reading other people's stuff for a little bit.
Yeah, especially if people have a really strong voice. The rhythms of their sentences get into me. But I tend to think it's often for the good, because it comes out in the editing process. But it's opening, it's like just kind of course correcting you a little bit. A little funnier, life is funny as well as painful, or a little more description, right? Because that description was so beautiful and grounded me there. And I tend to think it doesn't get in the way. I don't know. Now that I spend so much of my time just scrolling on something, I think anything I'm doing that's bringing art into my life is good.
Yeah.
But of any kind.
I think that's the best that the internet has to offer is showing you the creativity that people have and the things that they just come up with in their brains.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I've been watching somebody slowly make a chainmail dress out of, you know, those melty beads?
Oh, yeah,
like
perler beads.
Melty
yeah.
beads and jump rings. And I've
amazing.
been following her for like 7 months while she closes these thousands of rings at one time. And it's very exciting to see everything that can be out there, but it also becomes like a comparative tool that can be a nightmare.
It can be exactly. We live in both. Both things are true. Yeah. Should we ask for questions from you all?
I was wondering about editing. Have you ever taken a single piece and submitted it to different editors?
This is such a good question. I mean, it's so subjective, right? And so I think that I haven't done that, but I have my early readers, right? So I show things to one friend, and then with this last book, my first book, I had a lot of different people read it as I went along. And with this book, I showed it to 2 friends until it was done, and then I showed it to Adam, my husband, but the 2 friends had very different things to say. And so I would sort of know, okay, Aaron's going to push me this way and Lila's going to push me that way. And that was kind of helpful to me, but I generally hate it, right? I hate it. You just want there to be an answer out there, right? What is the right way? What is the right shape for this story? And as I'm always telling my students, like, the right shape for your story doesn't exist yet, and it is its own right shape. But working with editors can be really painful. But I've sent my novels off to different editors, right, and seen what they had to say. And it was very different things. People read things very differently.
That's kind of scary,
Yeah.
I would say, in my experience, when I've had multiple people give me different opinions, if they're trusted people, because everyone could say something about everything, but if they're trusted people, it often feels like a temperature check in my head. Like if I say, oh, should I wear this or that? And someone says, wear that. And then suddenly I'm like, nope, I wanted the first one.
Right.
That's what lets me make the choice. So I was in a workshop a couple years ago with a bunch of people whose opinions I really, really valued and got a lot of great feedback from them. But I also always think about this. This is like my creative writing sad story. It's not that sad to anyone but me. But I wrote what I thought was my best ever short story at the time in college, and had this workshop of just complete random people, and everyone gave me the widest possible range of feedback and interpretations, and it confused me so much that I never looked at it again. I was like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
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 I think it's important to have them be trusted people whose work you respect or whose perspective means something to you, because there's always going to be someone out there who's just like, I hate it, or like, no edits.
Exactly. And then they both say that. Yeah. So you went to Swarthmore, and I went to Swarthmore. And so we both went to the same college. And I took my first creative writing class at Bryn Mawr. And I can't remember, it was fiction. You had to like submit a story to get in, and I was feeling really good. I had just come back from a semester abroad in Bogota, Colombia. And I submitted my first story, and it was that model where everyone went around. But instead of everyone going around to say how they felt, the professor, who I do not remember his name, because you'll see why I blocked it out, said, there's nothing to say about this story. It's overwrought, and that's the only word that needs to be said, and we're not discussing it.
Oh my goodness.
And so that was my first experience in a writing workshop. I had many others after, but I love to tell my students that, because it's like, anything says, like, how helpful? It's not helpful. It's not helpful. Yeah. So in my workshop, we do a lot of asking questions, right? Here I didn't understand, or here I'm wondering why you did, why this, instead of declaring our opinions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was your writing workshop experience at
I had
Swarthmore
some
like?
varied experiences. I really loved the guy who led this workshop. You maybe would know Christopher Castellani.
Oh, I know
He's
Chris.
great.
Chris and I went to college together.
Okay.
He was my year, and then
Okay.
we've have been writing friends
He's
since.
fantastic.
Yeah.
So he led that workshop where I got so confused, and I learned a lot from him. But it's like, really, if there's a certain number of people who are bringing a chaotic and sinister energy,
not
it's
good.
hard to take it back. But I had a lot of great experiences. I was doing more fiction and a lot of poetry at the time. And I actually had a lovely experience where I went back for the first time in a very long time, a couple years ago, and my poetry professor and advisor, Nat Anderson.
Nat Anderson's the best.
She's the best. She's the very best. I have a song on my first album dedicated to her.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Because she gave me some money to make the album.
Oh
I
my
think.
God.
So she took me out to lunch, and she was like, I bought a CD player to listen to your CD. And then she pulled out a huge stack of paper, and she had done a full close reading of all of the lyrics of my album. It was such a moving and intense experience. And then I was like, can I have these papers? And she was like, no.
That is so beautiful.
She said she put my email address on the manila folder, so when they clean out her office after she dies, they'll send it to me.
That is
And I was like,
amazing.
"Thank you." But yeah, that was a very special experience. She and I were very close, and she taught me a lot about how to figure out, how to filter out whose feedback is worthwhile and whose is not.
Yeah.
Because especially in like the MFA world, there are a lot of dudes who have a lot to say.
There are.
And yeah, she helped me a lot with that. Yeah. Any other questions? She said, "Oh, what did you mean when you said you don't write essays very much?" Heather? Yeah. My answer is very short, and it's really that I got at a certain point with fiction, I turned myself crazy enough over coming up with ideas that I was like, I'm going to just write a thing that I experienced. And then I discovered that I really, really, really like it. And I learned more about my own life by writing about it, and I find that important. So that's why I moved into the essay world, but I'm curious to know why fiction is your main.
Yeah, so I started out, I took fiction in college. After that terrible thing, I actually took my next workshop with Jonathan Franzen, who was a wonderful teacher. And I knew I wanted to write fiction, and I wouldn't let myself. So I told myself I needed to do important political work, and I moved to San Francisco, and I did nonprofit work, and I worked for newspapers that were activist newspapers, so High Country News and San Francisco Bay Guardian, and I was writing about environmental justice issues, and that felt really important and good, and I knew I wanted to write fiction, and I felt like I shouldn't. And finally, I had this wonderful mentor who basically was like, you're going to do what you want to do. And I went and got my MFA in fiction. And I actually love essays. I think that to me they're like the perfect form because they have the creativity of fiction and they have the truthfulness of nonfiction, journalism. I just don't write them that often because writing a novel to me takes so much of my time and energy that I don't know, I don't really give myself the time. I wrote a bunch of essays to promote my first novel, and I'm starting to write essays to promote this novel. So I do it for that, and I would do it all the time, except that I can't do both. I can't keep both in my head.
I love the idea of writing essays to promote a
Yeah.
novel.
Yeah.
I just don't see... the writing that I've had published is all standalone pieces, but it's interesting to see, I think there's a lot more in common between releasing books and releasing music, or there could be. I think they appear to be basically the same, and for some reason are approached very, very differently. And so I'll see friends who are putting out their debuts, and they'll be like, I didn't have good sales. And I'm like, you posted about it one time.
Yeah.
and thought that everyone like you have
Yeah.
you have to make 300 posts about this and do your mailing list and email bookstores yourself and say I want to read there. And for some reason, like a lot of writers I know aren't very multimedia about their approach. And musicians are out there being like, I made a temporary tattoo with my album release date on it. Let me put it on your forehead. So it's really, I'm excited to read the work that you're putting out around this
Well,
book.
to that end, I made for this event and for the future these postcards with it, because the cover of the book is so pretty. And I made postcards with the cover of the book. They're right on the table out there. You can all get one, and it has a QR code to pre-order the book.
Yay!
So I am trying,
I
because
love it.
I think you're entirely right. And my first book, I did very little except these essays, and I was like, well, who's buying it? And I think the introversion of writing a book and the personality of who writes a book, it's like, I don't want to perform, and I don't, and so I love hearing about how musicians do it, and I think, it should happen.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to take a post.
Yeah.
I even want to put one on my wall. I really think it's a beautiful
It's really
cover.
beautiful.
Yeah.
I agree. You go first, because I want to hear about this with your essay, but also with your music.
Sure. I would say most of the pieces I've had published over the last 10 years are part of this longer collection. And my approach is kind of like there aren't any rules. So like I don't really know if you're supposed to edit something after it's already been published, but I have rewritten a few of the things and they're just going to be the way they're going to be. And I do like the idea. I'm not a very private person. I get a lot out of living my life fairly publicly because I think of it almost as a reflective tool. And so putting out something that I find cringe later, or I'm like, wow, I was really in a different phase of grief then, or that I didn't have perspective at that point, I find it interesting and fun and sometimes funny. And then as far as putting music out, I really do feel a sense of release when I release it. I feel like this does not belong to me because like a longer work, like a novel, when it comes out in the world, that is actually the end of your experience, and then it's the beginning of everyone else's experience, and there's not even a millisecond of overlap. If it's out in the world, it's not yours, and if it's not out in the world, it's yours, and like they're mutually exclusive. And I find that exciting because I like those sort of threshold moments. Like it's the closest thing to like somebody being born or somebody dying. It happens in 1 second, and then everything is different. So I personally find it really exciting, and I would say if I was like an adrenaline junkie of any sort, it's really like I'll sit in my bed at night and be like, my heart will like start racing because I'll imagine what it will be like the day my album comes out, and I'll be in my bed being like,
Oh, I want to borrow some of that excitement. But I do agree, like my book lives in my head for so many years. You know, the characters are alive in my head. I'm thinking about them. I might be talking to my family, but I'm thinking about them. And the minute it came into this form, the galley form, it was gone. They were gone. They do not live, like even coming into Forbes, where my character Ruth has been, I didn't feel her here anymore. I mean, it's almost like I actually don't feel their presence anymore, and now I have this beautiful object. And it's almost like a transfiguration, right, from one form to another. And I love the time when they live in my head the most, honestly. But now there's this object, and the object feels very different. It feels like this thing I'm giving out. I want people to have. So, yeah, it feels really different. Anything else?
Kimaya, I want to share my experience with the essay you read today. It was remarkably historically accurate. And at the time, for me, it was a tragedy. And you made it fun.
Well, you made art out of it. It was really
Thank
so
you. That's
beautiful.
nice to hear. That has been a really great part of the experience for me of writing all these essays, is that in order to take it from what it was to what it is now, I had to take every step along the way. It was a really sad essay when it started, and then it was a little too weird, and then it was like I feel like I'm with like a spyglass, and the only way I can see something is by zooming all the way out and all the way in like 50 times. So it's really nice to hear. Thank you. That's my dad, by the way. From the essay. Awesome.
Thanks, you all. Thank you.
Thank you guys for
This was
coming.
really fun.
Pre-order the Emily's. Thank you. I think we can. Yeah.
Why are your students not here? Did you try to keep them separate?
It's not here. They're not
Oh,
around.
January.
I actually, when I got this invitation, I said, oh, I'd love to do it when the students are here. But they're not here right now. They're home sleeping, I think.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Thank you so much. That's so fun.
I
Yeah.
love talking about this. When does your album come